Okay, so here's something to think about. How often do we see a movie that tries to be a psychological thriller, a comedy, and a murder mystery all at once? That's exactly what A Private Life is aiming for. And it's a lot to take in.
Oh, absolutely. Just hearing the premise makes my head spin a little. A psychiatrist whose life is falling apart, a patient's mysterious death, a hypnotist, and even past lives. It's like they threw every dramatic trope into one movie.
Right, and the thing is, that kind of ambition can either make a film really compelling or completely overwhelming. From what I've read, it seems like this one leans more toward the latter. There's just so much going on that it's hard to keep track of what the movie's actually trying to say.
That's exactly the impression I got too. And it's a shame because the core idea, a psychiatrist being drawn into the mystery of her patient's death, is actually really intriguing. It's the kind of premise that could have been a tight, focused thriller. But then they added all these extra layers and it sounds like it just got messy.
Yeah, and let's talk about those layers for a second. You've got Lillian Steiner, played by Jodie Foster, who's already dealing with her own emotional breakdown. Then there's the death of her patient Paula, which might be a suicide or a murder. And on top of that, there's this whole subplot about a hypnotist and a supposed past life connection between Steiner and Paula. It's like, pick a lane.
Exactly. And I think that's where the movie loses people. When you have so many different storylines competing for attention, it's hard to stay invested in any one of them. It's like the filmmakers were trying to do too much at once, and the result is just chaos.
And chaos is the last thing you want in a psychological thriller. These kinds of movies rely on keeping the audience intrigued and on edge. But if the plot is too convoluted, it just ends up being frustrating. I mean, the review even said that confusion reigns, which is never a good sign.
No, it's not. And I think part of the problem is that the script was just too ambitious. The review described it as engorged, which is a pretty vivid way of saying it was bloated. It sounds like the writers had a lot of ideas, but instead of narrowing them down, they tried to cram them all in.
Yeah, and that's a rookie mistake, honestly. Sometimes less is more, especially in a genre like this. If they had just focused on the murder mystery and Steiner's personal struggles, I think the movie could have been a lot stronger. But instead, they threw in all these extra elements, and it just diluted the impact of the main story.
And it's not just the plot, it's also the characters. From what I've heard, Jodie Foster does a great job as Steiner, but the other characters feel a bit underdeveloped. Like Paula's daughter Valerie, who comes across as needy, and her husband Simon, who's clearly hiding something. Those are interesting traits, but it doesn't sound like the movie really explores them in depth.
That's a good point. And it's a shame because the cast is fantastic. I mean, you've got Jodie Foster, Mathieu Amalric, Daniel Auteuil. These are some of the best actors out there. But even the best actors can only do so much with a script that's all over the place.
Exactly. And let's not forget the tone, which is another area where the movie seems to struggle. The review mentioned that the humor didn't really land, which is a big problem. Injecting humor into a thriller can work if it's done well, but if it feels forced or out of place, it can take the audience out of the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's another example of the movie trying to do too much. Balancing humor with darker elements is tricky, and it sounds like this film didn't quite pull it off. Instead of adding to the story, the humor just ends up being a distraction.
And that's really unfortunate because you can see the potential in a movie like this. The premise is intriguing, the cast is amazing, and the setting, Paris, is always a great backdrop for a film. But when the execution doesn't live up to the promise, it's just disappointing.
It really is. And I think that's why the review ultimately gave it a 6 out of 10. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not a great one either. It's just kind of there.
So let's answer the big question. Should people see this movie? What do you think?
That's a tough one. I think if you're a fan of Jodie Foster or you're really into French cinema, it might be worth checking out. But if you're looking for a tight, well-executed thriller, this probably isn't it.
I agree. It sounds like the kind of movie that might appeal to a very specific audience, but for most people, it's probably not a must-see. There are just too many issues with the script and the direction to make it a truly satisfying experience.
Right? And I think that's the key takeaway here. A Private Life has some interesting ideas and moments, but it doesn't quite come together as a cohesive whole. It's a movie that's worth a watch if you're curious, but don't go in with high expectations.
Well said. And I think that's a wrap on this one. Should we move on to the next topic?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
You've been listening to Movies First.
Available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favourite podcast player. You can also stream on demand at Bytes.com.
This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.